Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about the only 5 quartz watches that you should consider owning currently. These are current production watches that are luxury watches, first of all, but also battery powered. These are quartz watches. And I know if you're a watch collector or a watch enthusiast, this may not seem like something you should do, right? Most people are about the mechanics of the watches, I would say. I work with so many of you at delraywatch.com. But there are some positive things that we're going to be talking about these 5 watches. And these watches are from manufacturers that many of you know, love, and enjoy. Believe it or not, Sinn, of all watch brands, has a quartz watch. Omega has a quartz watch, or several actually. We're going to talk about this in just one second. Of course, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, where we did have a couple of Grand Seiko quartz watches, but they flew off the shelf because of the reasons I'll be sharing with you in a second. Today on the wrist is not a quartz watch. I don't have one in my collection right now. It's a very special jump hour watch. You can see more about this on my Instagram, The Real John P. So why would you want a quartz watch, right? There was a quartz crisis decades ago, and watch brands thought they would go out of business because of the advent of quartz watches, digital watches, LCD. The whole computer revolution was starting, and the Swiss watch industry freaked out. The greats, Patek Philippe, Rolex, these manufacturers and so many others, right? They started making quartz watches, but eventually people started getting into watches as luxury and less of timekeeping. They became really ways for people to express themselves as well as have fun and make it a hobby. And that's where we are today. But there are still companies that produce quartz watches and movements. There's Etta, the manufacturer owned by Swatch Group, that makes quartz watches, and they're incredibly accurate. These are watches and the movements that are accurate to 10 seconds per year, even in very cold or hot conditions, which is quite an engineering feat for the way that these movements work. And when we talk about mechanical watches, you buy a watch from Audemars Piguet or one of the other watches of that level, you should expect it to be within a couple of seconds per day, especially if it's chronometer rated, a COSC certified movement. But if it's not, and a lot of manufacturers don't use COSC, they consider it to be reasonable to be within plus minus 10 seconds per day, especially if you've worn the watch for a while. And let's not even talk about watches that are vintage. So there's this big variance in 10, 15 seconds per day potentially on modern watches, but quartz watches are essentially guaranteeing you, for the most part, to be accurate within plus minus that same range, but not per day, per year. And I think that's truly amazing, considering if you really do want the most accurate watch, that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of watches without being radio controlled, where it kind of pings a certain location and gets the updated time and adjusts accordingly. More computing than watches. So let's talk about it. Oh, by the way, quartz watches are great for those that are looking at going on like expeditions or doing things that are exposing so much force to the watch, right? Mechanics, things moving around, they do get rustled and jostled around, and this does put force on the mechanical parts. It can make the watch break. A lot of automatic watch and mechanical watch manufacturers do a lot of things to mitigate these risks, but at the end of the day, there's moving parts, and there is, with the quartz watches, this really does do a great job for those extreme scenarios. So running into the first watch, Sinn makes a Zinin UX. Now, Sinn makes this watch exactly for what I just mentioned. People that are going on expeditions or special missions, right? This is going to be a watch that they kind of tout on their website for like operatives, or you're going to some remote location. They don't really say it, but I can kind of imagine that maybe this is for someone who's, like a military sniper, or you're going in these rugged, durable places where you need a rugged, durable watch, and that's what Sinn does. They use the tegimented steel, kind of that submarine steel that's really made to withstand and take a beating, and they take it one step further, remove the mechanical components from it, and put in the quartz watch. And I get it. If you're not out there doing these advanced missions, your life is on the line, something like that, you need to be there in the action. You can't rely on a computer. A quartz watch is really going to be the most precise thing the rotor's not going to fall off when you're out there in combat because there is no rotor, right? And that is always a risk when we're talking about mechanical watches. Even though I love and enjoy them, that's a plus. That's what Sinn touts this particular watch with. Now, next we have a watch that I love, and this is from a brand that I've honestly criticized a little bit on this channel in the past. This is a Breitling Endurance Pro. Now, the Breitling Endurance Pro is made for pretty much sporting people, but Breitling portrays this as a bit of a cycling watch. Cycling's really hot right now. It's even replacing golf in some, corporate circles as kind of that, team building kind of activity where golf kind of once stood. There's cycling and road cycling that's kind of chipping away at that in a certain bit, especially in the tech world. And the Breitling Endurance Pro is made for that kind of a scene. It's a large watch, so it's easily able to be read. It's readable. And what I love about, it's 44 millimeters, but what I love about this particular watch is even though it's 44 millimeters, it is so light. It is so light. It's made out of Breitling's bright light material, but considering the mechanics are not there, the mechanical movement's not there, this is a quartz watch, you take out all that weight and then you put the bright light material that Breitling has had for quite a long time, but they also can have a bit of a hollow case as well because they don't have the mechanics that a bright light automatic or mechanical watch would have. It's the lightest watch I've ever placed on my wrist. If you haven't put a Breitling Endurance Pro on your wrist, you really need to, just because if you put so many watches on your wrist, you just won't believe how large but how light it really is. And it looks quality as well, so you don't really feel like you're putting something that you might expect to be light on your wrist, right? It's from a very reputable Swiss manufacturer. So the Breitling Endurance Pro, very cool watch. I would not mind putting one of these in my collection if they just made a smaller strap, but they didn't, at least the last time that I looked. Now, next we have pretty much any watch that uses the 9F quartz movement by Grand Seiko. Now, Grand Seiko has done quartz for the longest time. They have really not given up on this, and that shows in their 9F movement. It's accurate to plus minus 10 seconds per year, and some out there that actually, track this thing in spreadsheets, and the people that keep track of this, who I'm talking about. If you're one of these people, leave that in the comments below. But people very passionate watch collectors will track the accuracy of the 9F movements in the Grand Seiko watches, and some say like a couple of seconds per year, if that they have noticed using different tracking apps. So I think that is unbelievable, and that's really, it shows and exemplifies that Grand Seiko is all about that kind of lean manufacturing, iterative improvements to the watches. This is a movement that they've built upon for decades, and it shows there. Personally, I like the SBGN 005, the GMT watch. We had, some of the other colorways of the similar style case and watch at delraywatch.com. They sold very quickly because I'm coming to find out, the more that we do stock and sell Grand Seiko, that there is a very strong and passionate quartz-based Grand Seiko collecting community, and they love these things. If you're one of these guys or gals, please leave that in the comments below. Now, next we have a watch manufacturer that maybe you didn't realize they still make quartz watches. They did in the Bond era of the Omega Seamaster. This is Omega, and they make an Omega Seamaster Aqua Terra 38.5 millimeter in quartz. Still today, current production catalog on their website. Now, it's definitely overshadowed by the Omega collections that are mechanical watches, right? Think of the new dials that have been coming out that people are raving about, that kind of remind you of the Oyster Perpetual dials from Rolex. Think of the mechanical Seamaster 300M, especially now the black bezel white dial, and now we have the green variant that's going to be hitting stores here pretty soon. People love those things, but if you're in the market for a quartz watch, and the quartz watches tend to be a little bit more approachable in price point as well, the Omega Seamaster Aqua Terra is a great watch. It uses the same quality materials and components as all the other watches that Omega produce. It's just they are offering it in quartz, and this happens to be the option that they're offering it in two different colors. There's, I believe, a white dial, a black dial. I actually personally owned a variant of this white dial 6 or 7 years ago, and I went on a really long trip, right? I was traveling, I was going to a couple of things, I won't get too far into it, but I was traveling overseas in different environments that knew it was going to be a little bit unpredictable. I know I was going to be very active with different things I'd be doing, going on different adventures and things like that, moving around a lot. So I had this watch and I wore it and it was phenomenal. I really came to love and enjoy this particular watch from Omega, even as a diehard watch enthusiast, a collector, and now my whole collection, I believe for the most part, is, yeah, I mean, it's all mechanical watches and predominantly vintage. So I had a lot of fun with it, and I really can't speak highly enough if you're in the market for quartz watches or considering one. Now, last, I was going to talk about the FP Journe Elegant, the Elegant 48 or the 40. This is a watch that FP Journe makes and made that has a special quartz watch with a certain chip that allows them, essentially the movement to shut down when you're not wearing it. And this allows the battery to last up to 8 years, whereas most quartz watches we're looking at maybe 3 years unless they utilize a similar technology. And that was really advanced when Journe did this. This was their approachable entry-level watch that was very approachable for Journe. But now the FP Journe Elegant watch, we're talking for the 48, $50,000 US. And so if we're talking about quartz watches that are worth it, unless you're a diehard Journe collector, I don't know that I would say it's necessarily worth it at this time to pay $50,000 for the FP Journe Elegant, a quartz watch. But it's up to you to decide on that. But personally, for this particular list, even though I like the Elegant, I would actually, here on the fly ad hoc, I'm going to replace this with the Cartier Must-Stay Cartier line that they came out with last year, and now they recently just announced at Watches and Wonders 2022, the black dial, the deep black dial Must-Stay Cartier that's nostalgic and reminiscent of, 80s, 90s Cartier quartz watches, that kind of early to late quartz watch crisis Cartier dress watch that is just so simple, basic, plain, approachable in price, gets you the Cartier name. I think these are going to be hot and collectible in the future because I've tried to buy them at the boutiques. You can't get the colors, the green, the red, the blue, the black. They're touting a wait list. Will there be? We'll see how the watch market pans out. But I love this watch. I think it's simple, classic, and elegant. And for those of you that maybe want a dress watch, but you don't need a dress watch very often, it's a great option because of the name, but also the approachability and the classic timeless design. But what do you guys think? I know quartz watches can be a bit polarizing, but once again, I do believe that they can serve a very important place in certain collections. They're not for everyone, but for the reasons mentioned, I think they can be honestly a really great thing to toss in your collection and also have a rewarding experience as well. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, comments below. Guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com and my Instagram, TheRealJohnP. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.